Hello and welcome everyone. It's great to have you again joining us for another AIA Canada webinar. I am Jeff Champagne, the president for AIA Canada. I'm going to be your host for today's webinar on presenting the results of our latest consumer behavior series, today looking specifically at e-tailing. But before beginning, I would like to first off acknowledge our sponsors for today's webinar. In fact, there are also the sponsors of the entire research project. And so it should be noted that without your generous support, it would not be possible for us to continue to offer these great insights and knowledge exchange to our members and having such great events as of today. So once again, thank you for your continued support. For presenting the results today, I have joining me first Rick Nadeau. He is the president of Quorus Consulting. It is the firm that did the research on behalf of AIA Canada, and he's going to basically present his finding. And Rick, it's always a pleasure to have you joining back, and thank you for being with us today.
Good afternoon, JF. Certainly always a pleasure to be welcome to this sort of event to talk about survey research. Looking forward to talking about the numbers.
That's great. Thank you. And we're also going to welcome back James Channer. He's the COO of InMotion Brands, who's going to provide his analysis, his perspective from an industry perspective on the results. So welcome back, James.
Yeah, so great to be with you here again, and great to see you as well, Rick.
So the format for today, what we're going to do is we're going to cover the content in three distinct sections. So we're going to first look at what are consumers buying online. We'll then move into the second sections where we're going to more explore where are they buying these products and services from. And thirdly, we'll look and explore what is the experience online of a consumer. So for each of these sections, we're going to first have Rick, who is going to present the results, the finding of the research. We'll have them, James, provide a bit of commentary, and then we'll move into a short Q&A. We're also going to regroup all together at the end for an open Q&A covering the entire research project. And so I encourage you throughout this webinar to post your questions in the QA tab. We're going to do our best to get to all of these questions. We also received some questions in advance, so we're going to do our best to cover all of these questions throughout today. And if you have any particular questions, more technical related to the webinar, don't hesitate to post those in the chat. Someone at AIA is monitoring the chat as well. So without further ado, let's move into the first section, turning over to Rick to present his finding. Rick?
Perfect. Thank you, JF. So before we actually dive into any juicy numbers, folks, it's important for you, everyone on the call here, to be mindful of how this data was produced. So this was a survey research after all. It's actually pretty hot off the press data. So the data was collected between February 21st and March 16th of this year. We completed online surveys with nearly 2,100 vehicle owners. So in our industry, that actually represents a pretty big, nice sample size, allowing us to kind of slice and dice that data with a great degree of confidence. So we can see some of these results by age group, by province, so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's dive into some of these numbers. So as JF indicated off the top, the first segment we're going to be talking about are what are consumers buying. Actually, this little segment here, we're going to cover three W's. We're going to cover the who is buying online. We're going to cover what are they buying online, and actually why are they buying online. So let's have a look at that first slide, then Alyssa, in terms of helping us understand who is buying online. Here we go. So overall, folks, our latest research results are showing that 12%, so just above 1 out of 10 vehicle owners, purchased vehicle parts or fluids online within the past 12 months. That number, of course, is different depending on who you're talking to, right? And these numbers that you see on the left-hand side are quite consistent with some of these demographic trends that we've seen over the years, having done this study now a number of times for AIA. Men more likely to be buying these types of products online compared to women, 15 versus 9. The age Cohorts, of course, tend to be very different. Interestingly enough, the 35 to 44 took a bit of a dip this year, but typically we do see this nice kind of decreasing trend across age groups, with the highest numbers being that 18 to 34 cohort, all the way to the lowest numbers among the 65 and over. And particularly relevant to our audience here today, we see that the vehicle owners out there who are doing business with independent service shops, with the aftermarket, are in fact more likely to be purchasing parts and fluids online compared to those vehicle owners who are only doing business with dealerships when it comes to service and maintenance. So this is the who, right? It's the 12%. In fact, what is interesting as well, and we can't forget, is that you have this 12% who are buying online. There's actually another 21% of consumers who are shopping online. Right? So you have 21% of vehicle owners who are going online, doing a little bit of research, and then going in store and buying online. So all of this, of course, in the more detailed report. Let's have a look at then the what is being purchased online. And here we've produced for you the results that we obtained in 2021, as well as the results that were obtained in the most recent wave in 2023. The top 5 products being fairly similar in ranking across waves. At the top of the product list, we have motor oil, which in the most recent wave 2023, 29% of online shoppers purchased motor oil over the past 12 months. 27% have bought wiper blades, 26% windshield washer fluid, 25% brake pads, and then 21% tires. Again, if you can kind of quickly glance from one column to the next, you see those numbers are pretty similar. The one number that did go down compared to 2021 is in fact tires. So that went from 27% in 2021 to 21% in 2023. Let's then have a look at the why. Why are people going online and buying vehicle parts and fluids online? Again, you'll see here compared to 2021, the numbers are pretty consistent, right? By and large, people are going online to check out prices, find a better price, find what they refer to as a cheaper price. Obviously, there's a distant second, there's the ease of shopping, the whole convenience of the experience, and perhaps not surprisingly to a lot of those on the call here, availability of the product was one of the reasons why people were going online. Compare that to 2021. Again, those reasons are pretty much the same, but we do see an importance in price being a factor here. And seeing as inflation was a hot button topic now, and it has been a hot button topic for easily the last 16 months, perhaps not surprising that has increased in importance since the last wave in 2021. So there we go. We have the who, the what, and the why. James, over to you. What do you make of all this? What do you see as perhaps some of the industry implications?
Thanks very much, Rick. Again, great data with respect to the who and the what and the why. I'd like to start to say, certainly with respect to the do-it-yourself market versus the do-it-for-me market, we've got to consider that there's certainly a percentage of these individuals that are purchasing products like wiper blades and even motor oil are going to be individuals that are very comfortable in implementing those particular products on their vehicles themselves. So when we look at the automotive service providers, clearly there is an interest level to increase convenience and ease of doing business, but not to a threat to their business. When we looked at the statistic there on brakes being the same percentage, many automotive service providers are deploying certain policies as it comes to customer sourced parts in terms of brake pads, et cetera. And so there's a risk of liability there that has to be considered. And of course, is that the type of customer that you want to do business with? When we look at some of the past consumer behavior series, what we commented on last year, and I'm sure the data will support it again this year later on, when we look at some of the trends in terms of demand, what we're clearly seeing with a lot of our clients in the automotive service aftermarket is that their businesses are very robust. We're still very bullish on the pure demand for their services, and so I would caution service providers to ensure that they've got policies in place to ensure that you're protecting yourself with folks that may be bringing certain parts that they're looking for you to place on their vehicle. Little surprise on the tire number there, in a decrease. Supply chain has evened off, and there were certain manufacturers that were seeing some lag in some of their products in the tire retailers that we work with. But the other thing that we've seen from a pure e-tailing, and we'll talk about this later on in the discussion today, is just the lack of presence that automotive service providers, particularly in the independent sector, have with the ease of doing business and shopping for products like tires, wheels, et cetera. There's just a big void in terms of independence and their e-tailing capabilities. That's what we've been seeing.
Well, thank you, James, and thank you, Rick, for the insights. I'm monitoring great questions coming from the live already. I'm trying to summarize a bit with the questions I'm looking at. And Rick, from a researcher perspective, when you ask these questions, do you believe that the respondent are looking through more of a DIY lens? I'm trying to buy these product online, so I'm going to install them myself. Or is there a portion of your respondent that might have seen the questions through the lens of, I'm going to buy these goods and then bring them to my service providers to be installed on my vehicle? Do you have a sense of that? Because a lot of questions comes from, does that cover just a DIY, or does that also cover a segment of the industry that also would do it for me segment?
Yeah, it's actually all of the above, JF. And in fact, in one of the other installments of our reports and a future webinar, we will be talking a little bit about DIY. But what we did find out is that through this research is that some of the individuals who are buying online some of them are bringing them into shops, as James indicated, with a very, 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 very low proportion saying that the shops turned them away with that particular part that they were bringing in. And then it goes all the way to individuals who are doing it to themselves, for sure. I mean, things like wipers and windshield washer fluid, for sure. So it's actually a blend of all of the above.
Thank you very much, Rick. Another follow-up question on this is, do you believe, and maybe that'll come in the third section, but what is the experience in terms of ordering the right part, and any sense of how much of these parts being purchased online, whether it's been installed DIY or through a service providers, or in fact the right part, any sense of returns or the experience from the consumer as to, in fact, we're being able to locate the right part online or not?
Certainly from our perspective, JF, we didn't go that deeply into the kind of the experience piece with online shoppers. A lot of time was spent understanding the who, what, and whys. But yeah, no. So unfortunately, we don't have a sense of rate of return and whether there's any. We do have a little bit of a sense of overall satisfaction with the parts and fluids that were purchased online, and we'll touch on that actually in the third part of our webinar today, but to dig into the rate of returns, and nothing there.
Sure. And I'll finish maybe about one of the questions we received in advance after this when I was on. Talk about the trends over time. And I know you've conducted this research even pre-2021. From your perspective, your analysis, those trends over time seems to be something that consistently evolve in one direction. You haven't seen a lot of deltas or variations in the results from past years.
Yeah, that's right. Very few in the way of major spikes. The overall incidence of individuals buying online has remained fairly consistent. Now, we don't have a sense of share of wallet. We have a little bit of data in the report regarding kind of the median amount spent online among shoppers, and even there, it tends to be fairly consistent. Where we do see a little bit of these shifts, we've already covered two of those shifts, in fact, in the last couple of slides, right? So the little bit of a shift in terms of online shoppers buying tires, that has dropped. And maybe that's because arguably, and I'm far from being the level of expert that James is in the industry, but could be because shops have opened compared to 2021. Fewer people are having to do that on their own. We also saw a little bit of a shift there. We'll see that a little bit in the next segment in terms of where consumers are buying. So a little bit of variation, but by and large, fairly solid numbers years over year.
Sure. And one last question, I'll give it to James, a questions or comment from the live that says, would maybe the decrease in tire comes from the aspect that it's very cumbersome to order, ship, receive, and if it's not the right product, return would have had some impact? I'm not sure if there's any insights you could share on this aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, that particular product in of itself is much more cumbersome. The way that I view and we collectively view the opportunities of the ASPs being able to present visualization of tires on somebody's on my vehicle, the ability for me to pick and choose and select a particular tire and or wheel, and seeing that visually on my vehicle is important. So I may not actually go through the entire purchasing process to have a e-tailer ship them to me. But as a consumer, if you're a retailer and providing me the visualization and functionality for that shopping experience to be made easier, so I don't have to travel to your physical location, I can actually go through the process, maybe make a deposit, or actually then just email you and say, hey, I want that particular Michelin product with this particular vehicle. You told me the size is right. It looks good on my vehicle. I can then yes. But as my point that we're not seeing e-tailing from the software functionality that's available. And there's certainly some leading technology that's hitting the market. We're very curious to see what that adoption rate's going to be with retailers, with automotive service providers. Are they going to step into much more of a convenient shopping experience online, regardless if it's not full end-to-end?
Right. Now, thank you very much, James. So we're going to close section one. I know some of you have posted questions in the chat. I would encourage you to put those into the QA tab. It's easier for us to be able to get to all of these questions, making sure we cover them all. We're going to move right away into section two. We're going to give it back to Rick again to present its finding, and then followed by James, who will provide some commentary. Back to you, Rick.
Perfect. Thank you, JF. So here for this segment, just a couple of slides of numbers, and just a couple of slides, but these speak volumes. And I'm sure James will have a lot to say about these numbers. So let's start off. This is all about understanding who are the big dogs on the porch here. So let's look at our first slides and understanding among individuals who did shop online over the past 12 months, who do they remember buying from? And again, we have to remember, folks, that this is all about consumer recall. The big dog on the porch certainly is coming across as Amazon at 27%. So among those who did shop online over the past 12 months, 1 out of 4 bought something from Amazon. The next e-tailer, a distant second in this case here, is Canadian Tire, and then followed by Rock Auto. There's a whole host of other e-tailers that made their way onto the survey results. All of that nuts and bolts is certainly in the more detailed report that you can obtain from AIA. But these come across as the top 3. If we look at the next slide, and we can kind of see how these numbers have basically been changing. So earlier there was some interest from JF and from the audience in terms of how have some of these numbers changed over time? Well, in terms of the numbers from since 2006, you see there that big dog on the porch, right? 2016 all the way to 2023, Amazon has gradually gained momentum. That momentum has slowed somewhat since 2021. They're 26% to 27%, but still arguably the biggest player in the e-tailing space when it comes to automotive parts and fluids. Canadian Tire was gaining momentum up to 2021 and then seems to have taken a bit of a step back in 2023. Rock Auto fairly stable. And then you see this host of other kind of e-tailers making their way onto the radar screen of online shoppers: eBay, Costco, Napa, Parts Avatar, Parts Source, with of course some of these numbers, which shouldn't surprise a whole lot of people, some of these numbers being fairly different depending on age, depending on region. Again, all of those fun details in the more detailed report. Another number that is certainly worth flagging is that number at the very bottom of this chart, right? Are the proportion of individuals who couldn't even remember where they had bought it from. So what does that tell us as researchers? And maybe it tells something differently to James. I'd be curious to hear his thoughts on this, which is, almost half of all consumers couldn't even remember where they had bought their vehicle part or fluid from, which suggests to me that this isn't something that people are doing irregularly, right? This is something that happened at some point in time. It wasn't a noteworthy experience in their minds to the point where they remembered exactly where they bought those windshield wipers from, or that windshield washer fluid from, so on and so forth. So kind of an interesting trend there. That number has gradually been going downwards since 2016, but still worth flagging there, folks. So there we have the results from the where our consumers are buying from. So over to you, James, for your gold nuggets.
Yeah, appreciate that. Can we just go back to the first slide, because I think that was really impactful. Yep. Nope. Let's move back forward. Yep. One more, Alyssa. One more. Yep. Wrong way. Okay, we're a little slow there. It was what I wanted to touch on was the increase there with Amazon specifically, and Amazon as an e-tailer has significant dominance. Thank you very much. Amazon as an e-tailer with no brick and mortar has a significant dominance. However, the way that Google search algorithms actually work, it provides advantage for geographical proximity. Unfortunately, though, within the automotive aftermarket, the online presence and visibility of too many of our automotive service providers are very weak. Although they've got proximity as an advantage, they really lack a comprehensive digital strategy as it relates to organic search traffic. Meaning when somebody's typing in certain information, product or service keywords, that even though you may have some proximity as an advantage, you're not showing up on the first page of Google for those particular products and services, which is a significant missed opportunity from an organic search perspective. And we'd like to see a significant increase in the digital strategy of the automotive service providers within our industry. Absolutely. So I'm not surprised. No one should be surprised that Amazon is increasing its dominance there, because not only do they have significant brand equity online, they also have a significant advantage as it relates to consumer experience. We've all shopped on Amazon. We all know what happens when we type in a particular product that we're looking for. What happens? We then see additional recommendations because Amazon has built into their search engine, into their actual platform, AI that's providing you the data that they're gathering on what other shoppers that have looked at similar products have also purchased. And so we, as an industry as a whole, have to raise our game as it relates to the technology that's available, deployment of things like AI, augmented reality, 3D imaging to be able to, to see products from all angles versus these thumbnails that I continue to see that happens for tires as an example. Like complete missed opportunity that I'm anxious to see and working hard to see us improve on. And to the last point, don't know and I cannot remember. I'd like to see automotive service providers not only get more into the e-tailing game, but to tie that into why consumers want to do business with you. It's the level of confidence that you can provide and the knowledge and expertise that you have. So not only presenting more products in an e-tailing functionality, but then tying that with your service functionality and capabilities, right? The warranty that you would potentially provide, right? The level of expertise that you have in that particular product or service, or the types of vehicles and makes and models that your team has expertise on. And again, that requires more robust in the content that you've got on your sites. So we see a lot of opportunity and hope sooner rather than later that many more owners deploy these type of digital strategies that are available to them.
Yeah, I think we hear a lot of, and I hear this from some of my other clients, James, is how do we compete with these large online e-tailers, right? And I think you spoke to something very important there, and it's about kind of going beyond that transactional piece, which is purely online in some ways, to something more of a engagement with your clients. And engagement can mean different things to different industries and different sectors. And you started touching on that a little bit. I think that's quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rick and James. I'll start, Rick. We've further get some more questions. Not only are we trying to understand the responses of your server responded in terms of buying products online, maybe it is also for the purpose of do it for me type of model. What about online booking? Do you think that someone who's looking to book a specific type of repair or an oil change would also be captured as part of your results?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's actually something that we started tracking I think in the last wave back in 2021, and I think we're going to get a little bit of that data into again some of the next iterations of these reports for your team, JF. As one thing that we noticed quite clearly coming out of the pandemic, and actually in the throes of the pandemic, was the importance of that online interaction. Some of the tools that shops and businesses needed to develop to make sure that they maintained kind of that competitive edge and a connection and relationship with their customers. And our survey results are showing that tools such as online bookings remain very important tools for vehicle owners in the past as well as moving forward. So we asked, perhaps what are some of these COVID measures that were introduced that you would actually want shops to keep? So get rid of the plexiglass, allow us to sit in the waiting rooms, but keep that online booking piece. Are you seeing a little bit of that too, James?
Listen, absolutely. Ease of doing business is always going to be a competitive advantage if our ASPs deploy them effectively. And that includes creating less friction through the digital experience. The days of just having a website are absolutely gone. Your website has to be an extension, as we like to call it, a digital showroom. A digital showroom means is that you're providing me some of the same functionality and experience on my couch that I would experience in your showroom. Right there is software that's out on the market today that can take a vehicle, take a tire, and you can cast that tire through an augmented reality application off of your smartphone onto your vehicle in your driveway. No different than if you're on Wayfair or Home Depot or a large e-tailer in household products, taking a kitchen table and casting it into your kitchen or your living room, dining room, and see what it looks like. That type of functionality, that type of technology is coming to the market. The question is how accepting are we as an industry to adapt new technologies to increase the ease of doing business with the customers that we want to be doing business with? That's the big question.
James and Rick, I guess questions for both of you. So what I'm hearing is that it's the overall online experience community, as opposed to looking through the lens of buying a part, looking for someone to install it, or strictly looking for a service. Because I know online, I did a quick scan of our attendees. Some are squarely into the ASP front, but we also have some wholesalers that are very much more into parts sales and distribution. So How do we reconcile these? Because in our industry, you've got different segments being represented, but I think what we're looking for, I guess, and what you're proposing, James, is a more wholesome solutions to the whole experience online.
Yeah, absolutely. Consider a parts distributor that has an e-tailing segment of their business that then not only presents particular products with higher visibility, people buy with their eyes, so deploying additional 3D digital renderings, augmented reality, but then providing to them, hey, if you're not a do-it-yourself, here is a select group of customers, of installers that we work with that are in your area.
Right.
Like, so extending yourself into a more broader experience to create less friction for me, the online shopper. That's what Amazon is doing.
Yeah. Well, and thank you, James. And what a great segue, in fact, to our last third section, which all obviously explore the shopping experience online and try to decipher a bit what a consumer think in terms of their experience. So we're going to pass it back again to Rick to present the finding on that segment, and then we'll have James back to provide his own analysis. So Rick?
Perfect. Thank you, JF. So what has been the online shopper's experience? We came at this from a variety of different perspectives, and we're going to wrap it up with a slide that touches on a lot of these kind of ingredients that James has been talking about in terms of key success factors from an online experience perspective. So, but first of all, let's start off with overall satisfaction. And this time around, we introduced a new question in our study to kind of get a sense of how satisfied were online shoppers with their online purchase experience, so the parts and accessories and fluids that they purchased online, and those who did, through our survey, indicate that they also purchased parts in store. We got a sense of how satisfied they were. It turns out, well, I mean, the results are not dramatically different. There's kind of a slightly higher level of satisfaction among those who purchased online. But I think the key takeaway is that level of satisfaction is, in fact, quite high. So 87% are telling us that they're actually either very or somewhat satisfied with their vehicle parts, accessories, or fluids purchased online. That other 11%, actually, these individuals are not dissatisfied. They're actually right on the fence. So it was a 5-point scale. They're kind of on the midpoint there. So it may have been, some of it was good, some of it was positive. So they were kind of right in the middle there. And then in store, very similar. But the key takeaway here, folks, is that levels of satisfaction with online shopping is quite high. And the proof is in how people are going to be acting moving forward. If you have a positive experience doing something, well, odds are quite high you're going to do it again. And the results are telltale on the next slide. So where we asked consumers, well, how likely are you to actually purchase vehicle accessories or fluids online in the future? That top bar, folks, is the result across all consumers. So remember, 12% was the last hot number that we got in terms of who was buying or who had bought in the past 12 months. Our results showing here that 15% are very likely to be buying in the future. So you could probably compare those two numbers a little bit, suggesting, well, there's probably a little bit of stability, potential for a little bit of growth there in the online shopping space. 32% somewhat likely. To me, 32% likely. Well, until you put your money where your mouth is, that 32% is a pretty soft number. So I'm much more confident with that 15%. What's even more telltale, right, are the individuals who have shopped online in the past year. That's what that bottom bar is. So among that 12% who shopped over the past 12 months, how likely are they to shop again in the next 12 months? 49% very likely, 44% somewhat likely. So again, telling me that the experience was pretty positive, right? Which of course we understood from that previous slide. If we move on to this last slide here of survey results, what we really tried to understand through this survey were, well, what are the things that online e-tailers, what are the things e-tailers need to get right? When you talk to consumers who have shopped in the past, looking to shop in the future online, what are the things that they consider very important on in that online experience? Well, you'll remember not too long ago, we heard that consumers they're keeping an eye on that wallet, right? The price is important, so it's not surprising to see that when they look at all these various features that we presented to them, shipping costs was pretty high up there. So they're keeping an eye on costs. So make sure that those shipping costs are pretty sharp when you're going to be shipping stuff to me. But the other things that they're telling us here, folks, is they're telling us, make it easy for me to find my product, compare products, and get through this experience in a seamless fashion. So that built-in search engine is very important. Give me some detailed pictures is very important. Detailed menu of parts, pardon me, is high up there as well. Kind of second tier features, what we're seeing there is, well, what are other people telling me about their experience on this website? And so that would include overall website ratings from previous users, ratings from previous website users for specific parts. And then it's all about that consumer going to that website and recognizing some brands. So it's important for them to go to a website and identify some known brands that are featured on that website. Some comparison tools on that website are certainly important. Again, coming back to James's point about being able to make that informed, educated decision on site, on the site. And then that last slide, which is actually a little bit hidden from me there, option to deliver or pick up in store. There we go. For some reason, that slide's cut off for me. So these, in fact, folks, are what you see here are the top, practically the top 10 important features that e-tailers need to keep in the back of their mind. Some of these, in fact, being in some ways table stakes. So if you even want to be a dog on the porch, you got to get some of these things right. So what do you think of all this, James?
Yeah, go back to the point that Jeff made previously. When we look at parts distributors, wholesalers, yes, just getting your e-tail yourself online with an e-tail solution is one thing. Then you've got to really think about that entire experience that you're looking to create, and also to be evaluating how much of this business is going to be to do it myself versus to do it for me. And are you thinking strategically about possibly the different journeys that you would take these online customers down, right? If you had certain products that you identify, that you gave someone the choice to say, yeah, no, I'm going to do it for myself and shipping, etc. Okay, I'm going all the way down that way. Or maybe I want to look at certain products that you, the supplier, is recommending to me as part of your installer network per se, that could also be an option for me. Because when we look at back to your original graph on slide 1, the who shopping online, there was a large percentage within that 18 to 34 way back on that earlier slide. You don't have to go there, Alyssa. That's fine. And so I think we've got to look strategically long term about what that online consumer is going to be not only seeking in terms of that immediate transaction, but then also what type of relationship could we build with them over time. And we see it there back on the last slide where they're asking, hey, I want reviews. I want to see brands that I know. And so we as e-tailers, are we actually thinking about gathering some of this intel and insights from the people that are purchasing from us online? We're big really on making making data-driven decisions, and that's really an opportunity that I think as more and more both distributors and jobbers get online, but then also for ASPs, we've got to be tracking the data. We've got to be mining that data then to figure out those trends and specifically who we want to go after and why.
Well, lots of insights. So thank you for the feedback. Encouraging people online to post your questions in the QA tab. I have a couple questions that were posted in advance, but I'll start with my own, because we looked at this new question. What about your experience online versus in store? I think there's an assumption, and I think I'll let you both answer it. I think there's an assumption that the experience online would not be as good as in store, simply because we have the know-how. We know we're able to find the right part, the right fit for the application. But in fact, when you look at the data, there's a slight variations where, in fact, it appears to be that the online experience is providing, a higher level of satisfaction for consumers. Rick, is the number significant to say it's more or less? And what do you think, James, about, the perspective of consumer, finding their experience online to be better than in store? Rick, would you start?
Well, the numbers are very similar. So again, this is survey research. It's all about producing estimates as opposed to StatScan census data, which are accurate to the decimal. So the numbers are fairly comparable for sure. But another aspect around this is satisfaction will be met when expectations are met. And so I think it speaks in some ways to what are consumers expecting to do and achieve online. And as far as we can tell, they're getting what they want and what they need through their current online experience, and similar to in-store. So those who are wanting and needed kind of maybe that consult with a tech or with an expert on headlights or certain kind of fluid, they're going in store to obtain that because that's what they want and that's what they expect. Those who aren't wanting or expecting that, well, they're going online and they're getting what they need through that kind of experience. James, what are your quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, when the list of e-tailers that you shared, there are only a handful that actually have physical brick and mortar as well, right? The Costco's, the Canadian Tires. These are large retailers that aren't only offering automotive aftermarket parts and fluids. And so, listen, you really can't beat the convenience of sitting in your PJs on a couch, as long as the experience of the functionality and capability of I'm hearing you type over there. You're answering a lot of questions over there, JF. Boy, you're busy. With respect to the respect to the physical in-store and online, I think it really just depends which particular brand that you're interacting with. Amazon doesn't have any brick and mortar, so their entire journey and experience is focused on that online experience. They're not attempting to try to manage both online and in store. So my response would be, if you want to increase your e-tail experience, you have to be thinking about both the type of segments that you're going to be inviting to go through that journey online. And you then have to consider what occurs when they move from offline to physical. And it's been coined that omni-channel experience. How easy is it for me to navigate through these different channels with you? And so it does require a significant amount of thought, some data gathering and analysis, with the powers that be and brains of your organization to really think through what some of those sticky points might be.
Right. And James, apologies for the typing earlier. James, one of the questions we receive in advance, it goes a bit the opposite way. So is there an opportunity when you have the people in store to leverage a bit and transition them to some kind of an online experience? Is your feel that if someone preferred to do the traditional in-store shopping, is it counterproductive to try to encourage them to continue to experience online? What's your thought on this?
Again, I'm a big believer in one size fits one, meaning that you would have to break down every individual step within your the customer's journey and look at the points that are where the friction lies. So as an example, if I'm in a store, an automotive parts store, or a little bit different, if I'm at an ASP, that's an actual service provider, do you have hardware that actually is accessing your online shopping experience, and you're making that visible to me as another option? Hey, instead of going and looking on a shelf, and so many of the larger retailers have already done that. I can go into these large retailers like Canadian Tire, and they have screens where I can engage with my journey, that process, without having to walk down every single aisle. I can scan so yes, it really depends the breadth of what your organization is, and really what those, alleviating those friction points in the process in that experience. But for the ASP, which I love because that's where I spend the majority of my time, absolutely, that would be a game changer, because you would set yourself apart if you have a digital showroom functionality for at least some products like tires and wheels, because those are larger. It would make more sense because the majority of people aren't installing their own tires and wheels. And so even if that's not a large part of your business as an ASP, boy, it would be really nice to show me something visually where you could actually say, here, you can actually go through it, or give me some technology where I could take it home and then cast that tire on my vehicle with some cool looking wheels for my Ford F-150. That would be pretty slick.
And I think the online discussion is broader for sure, right? It's broad to start off with. It's not just going online and buying products and services. I think in this space here, online can be broadened to deepen that relationship with whether it's a retailer, a brick and mortar retailer, or an ASP. And James has touched on this a few times already in some of his answers. We talked about online booking earlier. So somebody who's just coming to the shop, to the brick and mortar location for certain kinds of interactions. Well, to what extent can online be leveraged to broaden and deepen that and strengthen that relationship with that customer? In addition to certainly shopping experiences, but you can have online booking. You can use your website to deepen that customer's understanding of what you do and what these parts do. And if you're recommending a repair or a certain kind of maintenance, well, beyond getting it just from the service manager who's at the desk, in what ways perhaps can that website be used to help that customer, empower that customer to understand that when a certain type of repair is going to be happening to their vehicle, that it doesn't come out as gobbledygook from perhaps a service manager, or maybe they're under the pressure, they're under the gun, they don't understand everything that the tech is telling them. Hey, go to this website, check out a couple of videos that we've prepared here to help you understand and appreciate the importance of this type of maintenance or this type of repair. Anyhow, just my point being, online is so much and can be so much for this industry.
Thank you, Rick and James. Let's move into, I guess, our last open session on overall questions and answer related to the overall report. And now we've received, again, many of those in advance, but I'll start with my own, if you'd mind, Rick. In your research, I think when we started on this journey many years ago, 2016, we made some assumptions that this trend was going to expand in the percentage of Canadians shopping online was going to continue to expand rapidly. And it would be fair to say that some of the assumptions we made at the beginning was that by now, a vast majority of Canadians would have, be shopping online, which is not the reality we're seeing. It's been pretty stable. And any sense from your research of the change and responsiveness from consumers over the last few years, and where do you think it's going to go in the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because every year we do ask JF, the likelihood of shopping online next year, within the next year, and the numbers are always kind of fairly glorious. And this is, it speaks to my comment earlier when I was presenting the kind of the future intentions slide. I take that kind of that somewhat likely fairly softly. The world is constantly changing. Obviously, since we started doing this research back in 2016, we had the pandemic, had a bit of an impact on consumers' reality, the importance of maintenance and repair in their mindset. Did that have an impact perhaps on their need to go online and buy vehicle parts? And then we're, if we can call it post-pandemic, inflation. Is that having an impact on, again, the importance of doing some of this online? We can't forget too, though, that yes, that number of the percentage who is buying online, we don't get a complete sense of how much they're necessarily spending online. So it could very well be that those who are online are maybe spending more over time. But we can't ignore that when we say shopping, it could also be I'm going online to do my research to get a sense of what is out there, what is near me. And then I'm going to jump in my vehicle, and then I'm going to go speak with somebody or literally kick the tires. So, I think that's what we've been seeing a little bit.
Yeah. And, you mentioned proximity here. And I know, James, you made that point that there's an advantage to be physically, geographically close to a consumer and able to really, rank high in those search results. You've said, obviously, we need our ASPs to really get to be more aligned with that reality and respond. You said your organization spent a lot of time to educate the ASPs, but it seems that we could be doing more. We're not getting there fast enough. I'm getting that sense from you. So how can we educate those ASPs to get to that reality quicker?
Yeah, more of this, tapping into the industry as a whole, tapping into the AIA, doing this type of research, getting on these calls, and then just more discussions and collaborations. Elena and I, who heads up the government relations for the AIA, she and I flew out and were with a group of ASPs that are very progressive, and they wanted to hear on a variety of topics. And I was asked to speak about this particular topic. How can ASPs get more competitive in terms of a digital strategy, and what considerations do they need to be considering? So it's happening. We just need to see more of it, and to increase our experience and understanding, to make a better decision on how we can compete, against the big boys like Amazon. Because again, brick and mortar, you have proximity advantage. But if your website doesn't have visibility and good ranking, there's ways to audit and test that, and then find out what needs to be done, and find a good provider to partner with. That's the key.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you very much, James. There's been a lot of questions about the whole geographical layout of the respondent, Rick. People have asked, do you see trends that seems that specific regions of Canada are moving faster in embracing the online experience as opposed to others, and anything that you might have researched outside of the project with AIA that seems to indicate a trend that says, and maybe just urban versus rural, but or specific regions of Canada you think seems a bit more ahead than others on this front?
Well, I mean, typically online shopping has always kind of lagged in Quebec and in Atlantic Canada. That's as long as I've been doing research on things like cell phones and high-speed internet connections. They've always lagged in those particular parts of the country. When it comes to online shopping for vehicle parts and fluids, though, the research indicates that the numbers are actually quite consistent across the country. They're a little lower in Atlantic Canada. But as I was saying earlier in the presentation, even the use of particular types of providers, certain types of retailers and e-tailers is a little different from one part of the country compared to the next. There's a lot of this, again, nuts and bolts in the report itself. But if we just take Amazon, it's actually not that popular among Atlantic Canada shoppers, quite popular among BC people who are shopping online. The Canadian Tire, particularly low in Quebec. But whereas in Quebec, you tend to have a lot of Amazon, Rock Auto, Costco, Parts Avatar. So there are some interesting differences there. In Alberta, Napa has an interesting kind of chunk of the market there. Again, based on consumer recall at best. So there, just a whole host of differences from a regional perspective.
Right.
There's lots to dig into when you look at certainly the reports that you have at your fingertips.
Yeah, thank you. And James, any comment on that as to, in your own experience, I suspect you're working more in central Canada, but any particular insights about the regional aspects of getting that level of engagement from the ASPs to embrace a more of a digital reality?
We see it everywhere. We're working east, west here in the north in Canada, and we've got clients in the United States as well. The great thing about Google and Google search specifically, it's all the same. And so the right digital strategy is the right digital strategy. What we continue to see consistently is that there's just a lack of understanding and education that's occurring. There's misinformation that happens a lot, where business owners are just being, for not intentional, just misled, because where they're getting that referral to help them with their digital strategy, when we've completed an audit, and we've done hundreds of them, most ASPs fail the audit that we conduct, and it's because there's just a lack of broader education and awareness. And so again, sessions like this, coming out to AIA events, networking, asking questions, and taking the time to really find resources to help you build your strategy from a digital standpoint is no different than asking someone, what shop management system should I be considering, or what parts distributor do you use? It's just more discussion, more sharing of best practices as a whole. If we can just all continue to help one another, because I don't view us as in competition with one another, versus if we can just rise the standard of an industry as a whole, there's enough demand out there for everyone to be successful.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, listen, we're moving to the end of our webinar. I'm going to give you both the opportunity to maybe share the one important takeaway. If you had to summarize all of our conversations, finding, and presentations into one takeaway for the attendees, what would that be? So I'll start with you, Rick, and close with James. Rick?
Sure. So I think an important takeaway, and I think it's one that we've had for a number of years now, is that online is here and it's here to stay. When it comes to online shopping, and some notably Amazon have made a particular claimed a particular stake in this space, and there are lots of opportunities for your industry to kind of get a little piece of that pie that Amazon has been so eager to take over.
Thank you, James.
I don't remember who sang the song. Maybe you do, JF, that song, Let's Get Physical, I Want to Get Physical. Who is that? Newton John? Newton?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so we're all in the same
All of
age
you.
group. So what we like to say here at InMotion Brands is let's get phygital. Let's take both the physical and digital and connect it together to be more phygital, meaning let's continue to be those well-trusted service providers, parts distributors, et cetera, with our brick and mortar, but let's now raise our game from a digital standpoint with the right digital strategy. So let's get phygital. And so that's what I want to see us do.
I love it. Thank you very much, James. So once again, Rick, James, thank you for your time, insights. I know that the attendees always appreciate your perspective on giving a bit of the unpacking of these research. Looking forward to see you on our next webinar. By the way, you'll be able to download the entire report through the website at AIA starting June 7th. If you're not a member, we do provide some of the key findings through an executive summary that's going to be free for all to download as well. Please send us your opinion and feedback on this webinar through a feedback survey you'll be getting in your email very shortly. And keep in mind, this is the actual first report of the Consumer Behavior Series 2023. So we have more coming. Please check our research calendar on our website for the report release date. So once again, thank you very much for joining today. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, James. And until next time, well, take care.